Gyana Timrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unalitam Yana Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Vanchakalpa Tripascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, I'm going to start by reading the Sanskrit for text 19. Varuna no. Wait. I just want to make sure I'm reading the right. 1065, 19. Okay. Varuna Prasita Devi Varuni Vrikshak Kotarat Patanti Tadvanam Sharvam Svagan Nedhaya Vashayat. Sent by the demigod Varuna, the divine Varuni liquor flowed from a tree hollow and made the entire forest even more fragrant with its sweet aroma. Purport. Sridhar Swami explains that Varuni is a liquor distilled from honey. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti adds that the goddess Varuni, the daughter of Varuna, is the presiding deity of that particular divine liquor. The Acharya also quotes the following statement from Sri Harivamsa. Samipam prasita pitra varunena tavanaga. Here the goddess Varuni says, O Lord Balaram, my father Varuna has sent me to you, O sinless one. Next verse. The wind carried to Balaram the fragrance of that flood of sweet liquor, and when he smelled it, he went to the tree. There he and his female companions drank. As the Gandharvas sang his glories, Lord Balaram enjoyed within the brilliant circle of young women. He appeared just like Indra's elephant, the lordly Airavata, enjoying in the company of she-elephants. At that time, kettle drums resounded in the sky. The Gandharvas joyfully rained down flowers, and the great sages praised Lord Balaram's heroic deeds. As his deeds were sung, Lord Halayuda wandered as if inebriated among the various forests with his girlfriends. His eyes rolled from effects of the liquor. Okay, so this is a chapter talking about Lord Balaram visiting Vrindavan. And this is a very significant chapter in the sense that Lord Balaram would come and he would enjoy Vrindavan, which is that's the place of the highest rasas. Lord Balaram came to associate with the residents of Vrindavan to see his family and to see his friends as well as girlfriends. And from my understanding, there are Balaram's gopis and Krishna's gopis. So they Lord Balaram's not, from what I understand, Lord Balaram's not enjoying with Krishna's gopis because those are like Krishna's gopis in the sense where he'd enjoyed with his own group of gopis. But from my understanding, he's also speaking with the gopis who are missing Krishna. And of course, everyone in Vraj has a special relationship with Krishna that's unique. But Lord Balaram is also he is also part of Krishna. One and simultaneously different. So then we have the verse today about liquor. And one of the regulative principles is no intoxication. But how is it that we have all these verses about this divine liquor? It's quite perplexing from a material point of view. But the Lord and his divine associates are above the modes of nature. And is uh, that is the difference between us and them. And I just want to talk about this today because it can be baffling to hear about divine liquor and there's a goddess of this liquor, and then us on earth, in the material world, we avoid intoxication. So, so yeah, first I wanted to talk about what the first verse was talking about, how there is a goddess of this liquor, Varuni. And so maybe you all have been at a temple before and they made Varuni and you were drinking Varuni. Well, it wasn't the same Varuni. It was probably yogurt and honey or something like that, which is not, don't worry, you're not breaking any regulative principles or anything. Um, but yeah, there's a Balaram's favorite drink. Um, and it's very special in the sense that even a Balaram loves to drink it, but also there's a demigoddess that presides over it. This is her, that's what she's the goddess of. Uh, and it's personified, which is the unique thing about the spiritual world, where everything has a personality. Every blade of grass has a personality. And we, in this material world, we don't necessarily, in general, see everything as a personality. Like, I have a guy come over and mow my grass. So I am not really worried about each of the personalities of grass in my yard because it just, in this world, that's just something that needs to be mowed, and it needs to be maintained. Um, we have Tulsi, which is in our tradition, something that we greatly like. We worship Tulsi. We honor her as a personality in the form of a plant. So that, to us, that's very close to this. But it's a little different. I mean, a lot different in the spiritual world, in the sense that every tree, every bird, every blade of grass, every creature is a personality that has a relationship with Krishna, a special relationship with Krishna. Even the blade of grass is just like waiting for Krishna and his friends to stomp on them, or like, you know, get the dust on the head of the blade of grass, which is baffling to think, because we're thinking, oh, in the material realm, we're like, oh, a blade of grass is just this like low conscious, like this low conscious entity, and that it's something that we just mow over. But in the spiritual world, it's a lot different. That this is a glorified, it's a glorified position even to have the Lord's dust on your head. So everything in the material world is upside down from the spiritual world. In the material world, the servant is the lowest, and in the spiritual world, the servant is the highest. Right? And the person who has the most in bhakti has the most devotion, not necessarily material, uh, not material things. They say that those with material opulence, that's very difficult for them to enter into the kingdom of God, right? Because they're so attached to what they've built here. And there's a lot of ego involved. The ego is the trap, right? The ego thinks, I am this, I am this, I am this great person, I am wealthy, powerful, strong, good looking, I'm influential. And we build that up, and those people can become very famous in this material world, but uh, it is very difficult for them to become devotees because the ego, when it becomes so thick, it's very difficult to be able to perceive super soul. It's very difficult to perceive oneself as a spirit in relation to the super soul. And to want to give up everything. That's another thing. To give up everything before death. It's very difficult. So back to the liquor. Lord Balaram drinks this liquor and becomes spiritually intoxicated. And it's not that Balaram forgets his keys or, wakes up with a hangover or anything like that. No, Balaram is enjoying spiritual intoxication. It's not tinged with any modes of material nature, which is the difference of what happens with us humans. Us humans, our whole life can be ruined by getting intoxicated. um, so yeah, Lord Balaram is above all the modes of nature. He's above um, all material considerations and above the rules and regulations. Now, when Lord Balaram came as Lord Nityananda, even though he came as an avadut, which for those who don't know the terminology means he was basically in contrary to he's like contrarian to social norms. Even then, he when Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda came, they came to show what it's like to be devotees of the Lord. And even though Nityananda, who's also Lord Balaram, even though he was different, more eccentric and more, contrary to norms, he was basically still showing what it is to be a devotee and not, yeah, like following more rules and whatnot, even though it wasn't like how we would imitate. But still, when Lord Chaitanya came, Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda came, they came to show like what it's like to practice Krishna consciousness. And of course, they took it to the next level because it was Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you can't imitate them. Their expressions of ecstasy and their, mellows that they experienced, we can't imitate, but it became more human to us, and more relatable, which I think is important because we need role models and we need something that's relatable to ourselves. And that's what's wonderful about stories from scripture, is because they're supposed to touch us and to change us and to transform us. But yeah, Lord Balaram was enjoying in Vrindavan, this is this is their highest level of spiritual expression and rasa. They're in Gokul, Vrindavan, and with the residents of Vrindavan, and having loving exchanges and pastimes. It's like when Lord Balaram, when Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram left Vrindavan, they entered into a new realm of rasa. Kshatriyas, warriors, protectors of the people. The mood became different. It was more of chivalry and awe and reverence, in the sense where they were like royalty, and it's a different rasa in general. It's still high rasa, transcendental, but still, even in the transcendental rasas, there are variegatedness. So Vrindavan is still considered, their childhood pastimes in Vrindavan are still considered the supreme pastimes. These are like the cream of the cream pastimes. Um, and without getting too esoteric or whatnot, these pastimes are always going on, even the ones there's no linear timeline in the spiritual realm. These pastimes are always going on simultaneously. But if we are going to look at a timeline like on planet Earth, for example, when all these manifested, yeah, that period of life ended at a certain point, um, and they entered the next phase of their life in a different rasas. Krishna had queens, he had many wives, and he was royalty and lived in Dwarka, and it was yeah, it was a different way of life, but he was always thinking about Vrindavan. He was always thinking about the residents of Vrindavan, the gopis and Radharani. He always was meditating on them, and they were always meditating on him, and they were suffering in a very transcendental way. They were feeling separation from one another. And it's kind of like, um, when you're maybe this happened to me at least when I was a child, we moved a few times, and yeah, like it kind of reminds me of the feeling like when you're a young child and you have a bunch of friends and you move somewhere, and even though it's exciting that you move somewhere, you still like miss your friends and you feel like you want to go visit them and you want to keep up with them. And as time goes by, in the material realm at least, we start to forget them and we move on. And we may never even see those people again. At least that's what happened to me. Maybe visit once or twice, and then yeah, life goes on. And in a sense, that could have happened with Krishna and Balaram and the residents of Vrindavan, but it didn't necessarily fully, because they always remembered the residents of Vrindavan perfectly. But visiting physically didn't really happen. Balaram went I believe it was just this one time to Vrindavan, and Krishna, at least in the timeline that we have, the only time that they met up again, I believe, was at Kurukshetra. So, um, but that the whole point of this is that they didn't feel they were, even though they were separated physically, they weren't really separated because they were in each other's hearts. And that rasa is what Lord Chaitanya taught. This is the Gopi Bhava. This is the meditation of the gopis on Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya came and he was feeling this separation, and showed us what that means in this modern world. Only 500 years ago, still a modern world. Um, in this day and age, what is it to practice bhakti and be able to feel this? And he gave access to this. So even chanting Hare Krishna, for example, it is like the special passcode to feeling this to whatever degree we want to feel it, because it's up to us how deep we go. But he gave us the opportunity to enter into that, the gopis' love for Krishna, and to come out of the modes of material nature, to chant the mantra and to practice bhakti yoga, to elevate ourselves from passion and ignorance to goodness, and from goodness to Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness, and to rise above the modes of material nature and to feel divine love, which is what our birthright is. This is who we are. We're a spiritual being, part and part of Krishna. And so what we're really looking for is that. We're looking for that feeling in relationship, with all the things that we're trying to accomplish in this world. Recently, I've had some trying situations in my profession as a real estate professional. And I feel like I've just for 2 months been like beaten down by material nature and humbled. Yeah, like it seems like nothing's working, and I had a bunch of like cancellations, like more than I could even imagine. And yesterday was like, yeah, I was like almost crying because I was just like, I don't know what to do. I'm just like, I'm just helpless because I'm only doing what I can do based on where I'm at, and it's frustrating. And then at the end of the day, I just have to say, I'm not in control. I can only do so much. I have to surrender. And really the real foundation of my life is practicing bhakti. And it's so easy in this world to get distracted by all the things we have to do to live here. Um, yeah, comfortably. It's very difficult world to live in. And we have to work hard to live here comfortably. And, you know, um, yeah, just there's a lot of pressure. But at the end of the day, there's just Krishna. At the end of the day, that's all you can, your relationship with Krishna is the only thing you can take with you. And, I'm, definitely an advocate for growing wealth and for having financial stability and being able to contribute um, to your passions and, help develop communities and spiritual communities and whatnot. Like I'm a very big advocate for that. But at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you can't take any of that money with you. You can't take any of those houses with you. You can't, you know, it's it's just it's the swadharma. You were just it's temporary dharma. We're something that we need to do while we're in the material world. And at the end of the day, that's less important. And really what's there is practicing Krishna consciousness, chanting Hare Krishna. And, if we're, and I can say this is easy, like when you're working hard and whatnot, sometimes that the chanting, is something that doesn't take precedent. And, but really that's all we have. And at the end of the day, that's, no matter what happens, at the end of the day, that's what we have. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share that because I'm having, yeah, like even we're not, I don't think I'm the only person experiencing this. I've talked to a lot of people. We're in trying times. You know, obviously, some really difficult times. Just it's chaotic, and the only peace there is the shelter of Krishna. It's really true. There's really no other there's nothing else. So connecting our hearts to Krishna's heart is really this is really the only thing that's going to satisfy us. And so that's what the material world is for, is to beat us up a little bit, a lot of it, and drive us to surrender to Krishna. And it could take one moment, it could take 10 years, it could take 100 years, it could take 100 lifetimes, 1,000 lifetimes, a million lifetimes. It could take any amount of time, but um, it has to happen on our own sweet free will. And we can do it now or later. It's just a matter of time. And we might have to be cooked a little longer before we can get taken out of the oven. But at the end of the day, this is what we're here for. So if we can speed it up, that's even better. And we've been given a fast track. The practice of bhakti is the fast track to become transcendental to this material world, even in this lifetime. Even right now, we could decide, let's become transcendental. So let's chant with pure feeling. Let's at least strive for it, right? Um, it's like if not now, then when? Tomorrow, the next day? Well, we're not even guaranteed that we're gonna have a next breath. So the moment is all we have. At the end of the day, like this moment's we can make that the choice now. And why not now? So, yeah, preaching to myself here for sure. Um, but yeah, I feel very grateful that we have so many communities like this wonderful one here. And I've been able to stay connected with you all in many ways, even through community groups, and just very grateful to this community that I've been somewhat a part of for many years now. And yeah, I'd like to open up for questions. I know it's maybe a little early for questions, but I feel like the questions always spill over anyway. So if anyone has any comments or questions, would love to start to discuss. I see a lot of texts in the chat. Okay, Jeffrey, can we address the fact that there is a distinct effort here to implicate the gopis in some form of male proprietorship here? Why? Can we also address the do as I say, not as I do vibe in these verses? Okay, let me try to understand your first part. Okay, can we address the fact that there is a distinct effort here to implicate the gopis in some form of male proprietorship here? Why? Like, are you meaning like, can you explain that a little bit, Jeffrey? Is he still with us? Maybe he stepped out. Oh, is he here? I guess he stepped out. Okay.
Can you hear me, Prabhu? Hare Krishna.
Your voice.
You hear me okay?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Wonderful question. And as far as we've heard from Srila Prabhupada, and it relates very clearly to the verses we read today. We are feminine. All of us are feminine in relation to Purusha, the enjoyer. We are Prakriti. We are meant to please Krishna. And the verses today are about Balaram enjoying. And some people will feel uncomfortable. Why is he enjoying? Why is he flirting with these girls and dancing and taking intoxication? What's that about? Well, the thing is, we may, in our conditioned state, feel uncomfortable by the idea that Krishna is the enjoyer, because we're trying to usurp that position of prominence. And actually, our only happiness is there in pleasing Krishna, because that's our nature. And it's all about love. If we love someone and that person is enjoying, we're satisfied. If we're just thinking about ourselves, what I want, what I don't want, then it says, ahaitukya pratiyata, unceasing, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna is the only way to satisfy the self, right? So you gave a wonderful class, and including your own personal experience about how awkward it might be when we deviate from giving our. Yesterday, I made a slip of the tongue. Um, um, who gave class yesterday? Um, yeah, we were praising the devotee giving class, and we said accidentally that his class had potency because he's living what he's talking about. I accidentally said learning, but our ability to speak the truth effectively and draw others into being inspired to follow the path of devotional service is based on our own surrender and our own living example. Then we become acharya. That we're not just, you should do this, everybody should do that, but we're showing by our example that a life of devotional service is complete and satisfying and is beneficial for everyone. Anyway, I'm talking to Lama Gurus Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your time, as always. Yeah, wonderful points, Prabhu. Jeffrey came back, so I hope you caught that, Jeffrey.
I'm sorry, I lost internet connection, Prabhu, and I had to join with my phone. So I just caught the end of what Adi said. But I did catch the gist of it. And it is it is a burning question, though. At the end of the day, um, we are too intelligent to not pay attention to the fact that words are written for a purpose. And we are too intelligent to not pay attention to the fact that religion and spirituality historically has been used by the powerful to subjugate the weak. And the do as I say, not as I do mantra that permeates all spirituality, Christianity, Islam, uh, ISKCON, is part of that human tradition to use this powerful word to control the weak. And so I get skittish, let's call it, when the glorified text still says that it's okay for this group and not this group. And so I think my biggest hang up is with the presentation of the information as though it were for everyone without the historical context of who it was really for
Mm,
and why it exists in a very material, earthly way. There are two reasons for everything, right? A spiritual reason, a material reason. Everything that exists materially, anyway. And the spiritual reason could be because God wanted it that way. But the material reason could be completely different from God's will. We see that in, scandals with the Catholic Church, you know? So I get very concerned when the philosophy has this undercurrent of it's okay for this group, but not this group, because that creates division and it defines the division. And it also creates a hierarchy which enables oppression. And I think that because, to my original point, we're too intelligent to ignore this, that I am very grateful for the opportunity to even vocalize it. And then have someone like Adi and his, I don't even know what to call it, his blessed vision or ability to channel uh, the intelligence of the acharyas to us, because it is difficult to swallow, um,
yeah.
and we need that edification. And I appreciate you, and Adi, thank you very much.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said. And it's true about religious oppression or using religion to oppress people or control people. It's been going on in since the beginning of time, and that's our human um condition, one of our human conditions. It's we're small-minded, you know. It's we don't we have a hard time uh being pure. And even if scripture is pure and word of God is pure, it has happened over and over again that man has taken that and you know made it their own thing. And what we see is over and over again there's a pure religious tradition, spiritual tradition, whatever you want to say. And then it's like that for some time, but then some people come in there and they oh, how can we make a business out of this? And or how can we use this to control people? And it just like divides and conquers that way. And then we have someone like Jesus or Prabhupada or Bhakti Vedanta or Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Someone comes and they're like, oh, hold on, like this is this is the important thing, not this. This is the important thing, not this. This is we got to be humble. We have to be servants, right? That's why the Pharisees didn't like Jesus because Jesus came and he was saying anyone can be a follower of God. Anyone can worship in any house of worship, anywhere. And it doesn't even have to be in a temple. And people who are prostitutes and addicted to drugs and like people who were shunned out by this holier than thou society, he was saying, no, I will bring them into my fold. He was saying these people are devotees. These people are, they are just as important as anybody else. Minorities or people who,
Absolute,
you
Brajananda, you
know,
bring up a very good point because in the framework of the Christian theology, Jesus came and he gave us the Our Father, and that prayer gave the people access to God. In To your point, the Pharisees were upset, the Sadducees even more so, that Jesus was telling the people they didn't need to go to the established authority to contact God. We didn't have to call the operator to get connected. And that goes back to your point when you were speaking about the reflection of the spiritual world at turning it on its head. And it's funny because everything's upside down here, and we look at the spiritual world and we say, oh, it's turning everything on its head. Well, it's actually setting it right. And so, very beautiful points. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Okay,
Hare
let's see.
Krishna.
There's a few more hands up. Mike, I think I saw your hand up for a while.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so first I want to just say I'm really sorry you're having a tough time with work right now. You know, felt that, just I run my own business too, and those ups and downs really can stink. And the best thing that I like to think to myself is when like things are really slow and there's not much out there. Two things: it can only get better from there, right? Once you're down there, it's not only one way to go. And the other thing is, I do try to find ways to benefit my family and friends when I'm slow on work, so I'm redirecting that energy instead of into anxiety and stress. I redirect my thoughts and energy into more beneficial things for my family and friends. So I'm sorry about that. It's really hard. But going on to what Jeffrey said, you know, I feel that two things here. One time, sometimes I think when I hear these Rasa Leelas that, and I'm fairly new to all this the past year, couple years, that I feel two things. I feel one, that do you think sometimes those are in there to let us know that it is okay sometimes in the right way with our wife, our partner, our spouse to enjoy intimate connections, right? Because if those weren't in there, and at least we know sometimes, well, Balaram can enjoy these intimate connections and Krishna can enjoy these intimate connections. And with my wife, or again, my girlfriend, my partner, my spouse, whoever, boyfriend, husband, I can enjoy these intimate connections too, within the right context. So sometimes I look at that and I think to myself, they are giving us a framework here that it is okay sometimes, right? And the other thing I think is that, and the other question Jeffrey seemed to ask was, the do as I say, not as I do. Let me tell you, it's a dead end, right? The king with all the money, the king with all the women, or the queen with all the men, whichever context you want to go into, with all the pleasures in this material world, it's still a dead end. Go for it. What are you going to get out of it, right? So even if you're saying do as, let them do as, let them go down that path of material pleasure. I feel like, and what are you going to get out of it? What? It's still a dead end. What are you going to do? You're going to enjoy all the women? Great. And then what? What's at the end of that? You're going to enjoy all
Mm-hmm.
the liquor? Great. What's at the end of that? Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel though that's just my thing. That do you think sometimes those stories are in there to let us know that intimate relationships are appropriate sometimes? And to do as I say, let them do it. I give me nothing. Nothing is better. Thank you very much, Haribol.
Yeah, I appreciate what you said. Yeah, I mean that's a whole other topic with the intimate aspect, but we're personalists, not impersonal. Um, we can't imitate like Krishna and Balaram, of course, but you know, um, if you have, uh, if you're married, it's not like you don't like not like you're not intimate with your wife, you know what I mean? So, uh, yeah, that's a whole other conversation, especially in uh, bhakti community. But yeah, also I hear what you're saying about let them go down that path. They'll always learn, even souls who like Hitler or something like that. They're still soul. It's hard to say because they caused a lot of pain and suffering to generations of people, but they're still soul. No matter the worst person, they're still part of Krishna and they have their journey. So we can only pray for them, and offer um, our love and our way of life. Okay, we got very little time. Guranga Leela, I see your hand. Hi, Krishna.
Krishna. So is it okay to have like different rasas, like with Krishna and Radha, like different rasas, and that like sometimes like when we think about like what rasa we're going to have like in the spiritual world, sometimes it's hard to choose because sometimes we think that like sometimes we want to be with Krishna, but then we want to be with Radha, and then we have like confusion had like what to do, what rasa to take. Like, but is it okay to have different rasas with Krishna?
That's a good question. But let me just say that we all have our unique rasa and it'll develop naturally. And I hear what you're saying about like, oh, you want to have a rasa of Krishna or Radha, but there is a place for everybody in the spiritual world, right? That you could have that because there's plenty of residents in the spiritual world who interact with both Radha and Krishna. So I have full faith that we all have our spot. We all have our we all have our unique relationship, and all of our spiritual desires can truly be satisfied. It's not like in the material world where we're like some of them, but maybe not all of them. Like Krishna's the only one that has the ability to satisfy us completely. So I I have I have at least some perspective on that is true. Like Krishna will be able to satisfy all of our desires to have a unique relationship with him, or Radha, but all of them.
Prabhu,
Yeah,
can you
I
stay for the afterglow?
The afterflow, yeah.
All right. I'm sure there's lots of other questions in the chat, and we've opened up quite a can of worms here. And I think that everybody who feels like they would like to ask a question on that realm, why not? From Balaram having his fun to intimate relations to rasas. I mean, these are all things which pique the interest in absorption and gives us things to think about all day long in regards to the reason why we want to surrender to Krishna. So if you could stay and we could continue this conversation, that would be great.
Yeah, I can stay a little bit. It's 8 o'clock now, so it is time. Thank you for asking that wonderful question, and everyone else as well. Ananda Bihari. I see him in the.
Let me get to my safe space.
Come again? Is it 8 o'clock that the deity is open, or am I?
Yes, I see Jani Tai. What
He's
happened,
saying
Jani?
no, not today.
Maybe tomorrow. Come back tomorrow.
Yeah, when I was thinking on that subject of, okay,
Oh,
here it is.
here they are.
Jai Shri Shri Radha Muralidhar Ki Jai. Shri Gaurachandra Ki Jai. Nandini Radhika Ki Jai. Shri Rup Charan Ki Jai. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. See, dear devotees, this is what it means to be a devotee. Business is a little slow for Brajananda Prabhu, but he's still here with us, keeping his service going. That's the backbone there. He's doing it out of love for Krishna. He's not quitting. He's not a quitter or a whiner. He's a devotee. He's a soldier. She's Srila Prabhupada's soldier, Brajananda Prabhu. See? Okay. That was my 5 cents. Thank you, Garangalila. Wonderful question. Can you switch the rasa when you feel like? That's a very esoteric question. I don't know. We should ask somebody like Raj Vihari, or we need some big time scholar to address that. Okay, and I was thinking of this sensual enjoyment. We can think of it when it comes. We can think of it as almost like a necessity. A classic example is prasadam. Does it taste good? Is it satisfying? Our senses, it definitely does, but it's a necessity. We enjoy to live. We don't live to enjoy, but we enjoy to live. So in that sense, sleep is good. In that sense, taking prasadam is good. Engaging in a committed, meaningful, nourishing relationship is good. Starting a family is good in that sense. Because if there's some facility that is coming our way, and then we think that, oh, I'm here to suffer, I'm here to go through pain, and step over it, then it's not intelligent. That's not what Srila Prabhupada taught us. All right, Brajananda Prabhu, is that in line with Guru Sadhu Shastra? We use the facility. Utility is the principle Srila Prabhupada taught. So take that material facility or whatever it is and use it in Krishna consciousness, and it will become spiritualized. Bhagya is praying to Vishnu, which I feel deeply connected, so I chant his names. Yes, Bhagya. Yeah. We chant with connection. All right, so who wants to speak?
Garanga Lila has a pressing question. I can see.
Go ahead, Garanga Lila.
Pressing hard. I can see her. She's been lifting the world up.
I have asked this question a lot of times to like different people, like to different devotees, like, how do you surrender to Krishna? Like, it's the question I ask everybody, but I did not find any answer which like satisfied me. Like, I want to know how to do it.
Like a 5-step process, a 9-step process.
Yeah.
I think we have 9 steps, right?
Yeah.
Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam. Those are the 9 processes. I didn't list them all. But what is it? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam. Okay, here we go. Let's see.
Archa Vigraha.
Yeah, I'm rusty. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarnam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atma Nivedanam. Hearing and chanting about the transcendental holy name, form, qualities, paraphernalia, and pastimes of Lord Vishnu, remembering them, serving the lotus feet of the Lord, offering the Lord respectful worship with 16 types of paraphernalia, offering prayers to the Lord, becoming his servant, considering the Lord one's best friend, and surrendering everything unto him. In other words, serving him with the body, mind, and words. These 9 processes are accepted as pure devotional service. So yeah, what you just said just reminded me of that. I know there's probably a lot more to that question because we all have our psychology and we all have our different where we are in life and whatnot. And I think how to surrender to Krishna is a process for us all individually. But starting with one of those 9 processes of devotional service is a great way to start surrendering. Chanting.
Yeah, but how do you actually like become surrender? Like,
Oh, how? I think,
Brajananda,
how do I, like me personally?
how did you
no,
become?
how to actually surrender to Krishna? Like, since we already do a lot of like services, then how do you even surrender to Krishna?
Yeah, I think that's, like I said, surrender is a process, and by beginning the process of devotional service, any one of them, then you'll go through many stages, I think you'll think, oh, I'm surrendering, and you are to a degree, but then it's all of a sudden something changes, and then, oh, you got to surrender again, and you got to like, and I think surrender in the sense oftentimes is correlated with like us accepting what the reality is and being okay with it. And it's kind of like if you're in like, say you're fighting material nature, like you're in an argument with material nature, right? Like that's kind of like what's going on. Like we're in like a disagreement with material nature as a spiritualist, right? And to surrender doesn't mean to surrender to the material nature. It means to surrender to Krishna. And it's kind of like, I've heard it before. It's kind of like a wave, you've ever been in the ocean, there's like the big waves, and you can like get hit by that wave, or you can like dive into the wave. And it's kind of remind me of like just being like going with the flow intelligently, spiritually intelligent. And I feel like that's kind of like, to me at least, like what it's like to surrender, where it's like, yeah, there's gonna be problems, right now with the real estate business, there's problems. And I could just let them
For
overcome
both, remember, she's a little girl. She's a young girl. So give her something simple that she can follow, that she can practically do.
just chant Hare Krishna. That's the simplest thing, honestly, at the end of the day.
Prabhu, can I say something here?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's asking a good question. There's an idea of like service, just service. There's a lot of things we can do, like she was saying. But genuinely, service is pleasing someone. The lotus feet of the spiritual master is the only way to obtain pure devotional service. So if we say, Lord, how can I serve you? And I really want someone in my life who I can give my complete trust and obedience, who's worthy of my trust and obedience, then Krishna will send that kind of a person. And then we become a servant of the servant. We see somebody who's inspiring us to dedicate themselves in devotional service, and then we help that person. We become an assistant of the person who's inspiring us. And if we don't have anybody who's inspiring us, we can ask Krishna, and Krishna will send that quality of person who we look up to, who we want to speak into our life, and who we want to assist in what they're doing. It's not just vague service, but it's serving someone, right? Isn't that a good point? Who are you doing this for? Not just what are you doing? Who are you trying to please? Ultimately, Krishna. But Jeff Recker was objecting to the idea of serving someone who's serving Krishna, maybe doubting that, some people have misused that. But we have a freedom, we have intelligence, and if we're sincere, Krishna will give us somebody who's actually worthy of resisting, not somebody who's exploiting us. We have a responsibility to desire properly. Go on, and Andabihar is jumping in.
Thank you. Wonderful point. We're surrendering to a person. Srila Prabhupada, for example, we can surrender to Srila Prabhupada, to his books, to a guru when in due course of time, we take initiation and surrender to the personality of the guru. Yeah, and then it's like Rangalila, I was picturing you walking in the forest. There's so many trees around you, bushes, birds, and you're like, I'm seeing the tree, I'm seeing a birdie, I'm seeing a bush, but where is the forest? But where is the forest? This is the forest, Rangalila. You are surrendering. You're chanting and hearing. You're taking prasanam. You're attending class. But how do I surrender? This is surrender, Rangalila. You are surrendering. You're going to school. You go to middle school, Rangalila. Yeah. So offer your grades to Krishna. Try to see Krishna in math problems, right? That is surrender. You are surrendering, Rangalila. You are a surrendered soul. I can sense that in you. And I'm inspired by that quality that you have.
Can I add on?
After you, we're going to ask another 12-year-old girl to speak at Bhima Prabhu. He's a young gopi. Go ahead, Rangalila.
So I have feel special connection with Brajananda Swami. Like I feel like I met him before, like in my life. Like whenever I look at him, I have like a special connection with him. Like I have a special feeling, like as if he's going to be my guru. Like I was looking for a guru actually. I was interested in initiation.
Wonderful. Bhima Prabhu can write up your recommendation letter. You know, you need a paper to show it to Maharaj. So Bhima can write that. He's a disciple of Radhanath Maharaj. Bhima Prabhu is a good place to start your surrender. Right, Bhima Prabhu?
Well, I can certainly. Hare Krishna. First of all, thank you very much, Ananda Bihari, for putting it down to practical and to remind Gauranga that she's here. That's it. Prabhupada asked no more of us. Simply chanting, dancing, and feasting. And the chanting, of course, is coming to Bhagavatam class and talking with each other. And feasting is showing up to the temple and having a good time. The dancing, when there's kirtan going on, get in the middle of it. This is surrender. It's amazing. You know, Lord Chaitanya, we have deities of Lord Chaitanya. His arms are in the air. Why? Because he's dancing and he's chanting, he's singing. So surrender isn't this wild program of surrendering to an authoritarian figure that does you wrong eventually. Of course, that happens. But ultimately, as with Balaram, who's the original Chaita Guru, that means the Guru within you, you know, Gauranga, the things that you feel, like I have a special connection. I feel affectionately drawn towards Radhanath Maharaj. I feel aligned. I vibe with what how Radhanath Maharaj speaks, how gentle he is. This is the things that you need to trust, and that initial intuition that all younger people have and that all older people suppress is that spiritual connection. When I first met Radhanath Swami, I had the exact same questions you do right now, which is, how do I do this? What is this all about? I was in college, I was studying philosophy, and yet I was asking the same question. How do I surrender? Maharaj just said, would you help me do the dishes? Would you help me? This was when Maharaj had just taken sannyas and he had just opened up one of his first preaching centers in Ohio, and it was a little bungalow. And it was just, I was so lucky, very graced, that it was just him and I, and every once in a while another devotee. And he had all these cooking classes that he used to do. And he would just ask me, could you go get me the ladle? Could you stir the rice? Could you sweep the temple room? You know, just these things, these little things. And when we do these little things, and we do them with that little bit of affection that we might have for this idea of a God who's so beautiful that he shakes up perfect, gopis, that he becomes the absorption of unlimited jiva souls, and that we, unfortunately, are the few who decided to turn the other way. But when we do these little things, these little services, showing up to the temple, if there's a kirtan, get in there. If they're in the morning, one big thing you can do, Gauranga, is to make sure that you get to bed early and wake up early before everybody else. And even if it's just a half an hour before anybody else is around or before school, that there's nothing pressing on you, take that half hour and either chant or open up the Gita and read one page. And that's true surrender, because at that time, it becomes just you and Krishna and your guru. You can listen to, I always, first thing in the morning, just in order to conquer my mind, I put on Radhanath Swami's nectar drops, which are 3-minute, maximum 5-minute excerpts from his lectures where he's speaking about a particular subject matter. And I've always come to understand that when we have a pressing question, that Krishna will find a way, either through the books or through a Bhagavatam class like this, or through you reaching out and listening to Maharaj's, short little nectar drops. They're very easy to take. That Krishna will answer through them and through the devotees the questions that you have to alleviate your doubts. And Prabhupada said, and I'll end it here, that Prabhupada said that Krishna consciousness is simple for the simple, which means simple-hearted, one-heartedness, and complicated for those who are complicated, meaning people are up in their heads. They're churning things over in their minds. How am I to do this? What's the correct process? How many times do I circle the incense when I'm doing puja? How many Sanskrit verses do I have to learn before I get Krishna's grace? Those things. Whereas it becomes a very simple process of just, maybe you get up in the morning and maybe a temple where they have a small deity that needs a garland. I used to do this. They had the Nrsingadev deity at the Boston Temple, and he was one of the few deities that just tiny little, actually it was a picture of Nrsingadev, and he was one of the only ones that didn't get a garland. So when I was going to the Boston Temple, the one of the garland, the Mataji in charge of that, I had asked her about that, and she goes, now this is your job. Now this is what you have to do. So I would always make a garland for Nrsingadev. And it's such a simple thing, but it became such, those moments that I was making that garland were moments of realization, because when your fingers are on the petals and you are making this garland and taking this time to spend that intimate alone time with the deity that you are taking care of, your heart softens. And when your heart softens, Krishna enters. And when Krishna enters, that's how surrender occurs. So I just like to end it there. It's simple things that you do. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hey, Bhima Prabhu, I appreciate all you said there, but there's one thing that I'm really curious about, because I met you a long time ago. I don't know if you remember, but you told me a story about how you surrendered. And I think when I remember, this was like 10 years ago, maybe, I think you actually wrestled with Radhanath Swami to surrender. Is this true?
Yeah, tell Guru.
It's a long story, but he found my weakness. I was a fighter at the time in college. I was on the boxing team, and he challenged him to a calisthenics match. I told him that this is when I was a bhakta. I told him the philosophy was not a perennial philosophy. It wasn't whole, because I had noticed at the time that devotees, I was looking at pictures of the Goswamis. You know what I mean? Devotees who were fasting.
Oh no, we lost him. Oh, he's back. Bhima, the last thing we heard were the Goswamis were fasting and they looked skinny, right? You got to unmute yourself.
All the devotees I were meeting at that time were very, very thin, and because they were so serious, it was these were the beginning days, 1980, And so I was fearful. I was a nutrition major. I was on the boxing team, and I loved Radhanath Maharaj, but I just could not surrender to this sarira avidya. The body is a lump of material ignorance. I was in the middle. I was in college. I mean, the body was my favorite thing, you know. And so Maharaj, when I had, and I'll just make this long story short, I said to a group of co-eds that were over for a Wednesday night feast. Maharaj was serving everybody. Asked me just talk to them, and I was talking to them, and then I said something untoward. Somebody asked, why are you involved and stuff like that, and I was sort of like, it was like denying my full involvement, saying that the one thing that is not right here is that the health aspect, because I was a nutrition major, I was young, I was just a freshman in college, so I was a bit puffed up. And I said, the devotees tend to be weak. And Maharaj walked in at that time, and everybody looked over my shoulder. And Maharaj said, so we are weak, are we? And he goes, in front of these people, I challenge you to a contest, a physical contest. So I will save the rest of that story. It was a physical contest that was a very serious stakes were raised on that physical contest, and maybe next time when we have more time, I can tell you the outcome and what happened, and how through very creative and wonderful means, Radhanath Maharaj had me surrender at that point, that the devotees are the strongest, the devotees' heart and soul, and thusly, because Krishna is their protector, the strongest souls and bodies in the world belong to the Vaishnavas. So I just, so that was one of the ways in which he got me to surrender. I will tell the specifics of it next time when we have more time.
Keeping us on the edge of our seats here. Tune in for part 2.
It's a long story.
I know. I think you told me
Yes.
some time ago, but I can't remember all the details. But all right, Krishna. Well, it's 8:28. Where's our master of ceremony?
The thing in the chat that says you can't leave us hanging. Somebody said that.
I said that. I was like, wait a minute. That's like
Come on, Bhima, tell us a story.
Let me see. I'll give you an edited version. Okay, so he challenged me in front of all these students, a lot of them who were very dear friends of mine. Maharaj looked the same he did now as did back then, which was very slight. I was literally twice the size that I am now, so to speak. I'm half the man I used to be, as the song goes. But I was very much in shape. It was during boxing season, and he challenged me to a physical, not a fight, not a wrestling match. It was a calisthenics endurance.
He was about 40 years old.
Yes, he was 40 hours. Well, he was 30-something, late 30s. I was 24 at the time. And anyways, he waited. I didn't hear about it for quite some time after he challenged me. And then this was Athens, Ohio. It was it's sort of a valley, and it was during the middle. I was in the temple, and there were a bunch of devotees around, including a few people who were from that original challenge. And this was several months later, just out of the blue, he says, the challenge is on today. That day happened to be about 95 degrees out, sort of like New York, with humidity, because it was a valley. And I said, we were just laying around as if we were just wet rags draped over the couches and stuff. It was so hot and unbearable. We had no air conditioning. And Maharaj says, I challenge you now. And the bet was this. Um, so don't say Maharaj never gambles, but it wasn't a gamble because he knew it was a sure thing. Um, the bet was this: if I had to shave my head, and remember, I was in college at the time, and I had a full head of hair, and of course, a shaved head for me at that time would have been traumatizing. And then, of course, if I won, Maharaj says I can be a devotee for the rest of my life without a shed. So, at that time in the '80s, early '80s, you had to shave up. It was the thing you had to do. It wasn't like today, where mostly only the brahmacharis shave up. Back then, it was you joined, your head was shaved, and that was the biggest fear. So that was what was on the line. Everybody was present to see it. I went out to the backyard. I'm cutting this very short. I went out to the backyard to start warming up. Um, he said, "What are you doing in the backyard?" I said, "This is it's too hot out to do it in the bungalow." He goes, we will go upstairs." Basically, upstairs was the attic. There was this little room upstairs with unfinished pine boards and a tiny little window. It was an attic room. It was literally exaggeration about 110 degrees up there or more. It was when you opened the door, it felt like you were getting hit by like a wet newspaper, just like a hot, wet newspaper. As soon as you opened the door, it was a smack. It was so hot. And I said, "Maharaj," I said, "it's too hot up here." And he goes, "Intolerance of heat is a sign of weakness." So I took that up as being part of the challenge. And so we went inside the room, and he posted two brahmacharis that were visiting at that time. And he said to them, as witnesses, we are going to go toe to toe in push ups, squat thrusts. These are all wrestling exercise moves, very, very strenuous endurance related and strength related calisthenics, push ups, sit ups, uh, kippers, squat thrusts, um, et cetera, et cetera. So he's
Jumping
when I
jacks.
went over to jumping jacks, yeah. So um,
Oh no, he walked away from the barn. Oh brother.
Were
He'll be
you there,
back.
Adi? Were you there, Adi?
Yeah, Adi, were you there? Unmute
I've
yourself.
heard this story. I've heard this story 100 times. He told it at Mars's Vyas Puj one year in New Jersey at this hotel, and he had like 300 people rolling on the floor. Let's see if he comes back. He doesn't know he's away.
Hold on, let me call him. Say something beneficial for the humanity. I'll call him. Adi Pushabu, say something now. I'm gonna get off this call.
Mars said to him, "When are you going to surrender?" You know, that's what he challenged him with, because he'd been around coming to the center quite a bit, you know. And at the end of the challenge, Mars took the buzzer and went right up his head like this, because he said, "What are you, weak?" Every time he wanted to open the window or, take a break, Mars said, "What are you, weak?" Because Mars is very austere and loving, and he realized Bhima's playing hardball with me, so let's hold his feet to the fire a little bit. The tremendous bond between these two, you can't believe it. When you see the two of them together, it's hilarious. Lots of laughter. You can't get in touch with Bhima? I can't hear you now.
He was like, "Okay, I'll really leave you hanging now."
No, he's coming. He's coming. He's coming. Bhima Prabhu is very fortunate because Maharaj physically humbled him.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's subtle, but within it was very, very physical.
Everything was transcendental there.
I think there's a bunch of other stuff that has to go to the kitchen, but I don't know. I think she took it. Oh, yeah?
Adipurusha Prabhu is multitasking.
I'm sorry. Bima's coming here today to New York. He's bringing down a bunch of greens from his farm, vegetables and spinach and lettuce and stuff to donate.
Yeah. See, for him, it's all practical.
Of course, I can't hear you when he's talking. Oh,
Okay, Bhima Prabhu, where are you?
He had already been with Marsh for about 9 months in the center. He was a college student, and then he moved into the preaching center. And he helped a lot. He did a lot of service. And Marsh was hesitant to bring him to the actual temple to New Vrindavan for a long time. And then Bhima came. Yeah, Marsh brought him to New Vrindavan. Can you hear me? Anybody hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Marsh brought him to New Vrindavan. And after a little while, he began to do traveling Sankirtan. He did that for about like 8 years. And he has such a incredible love for people. I mean, you can't do this without loving people. That he was inspiring so many people in devotional service every day on Sankirtan. It was fantastic. I traveled with him a few times. But then he went away for a while. He's been away for about 20 years. Now he's come back and he's chanting and he's working with us with the guest program and with Krishna's Prasad distribution for the homeless. He actually bought the vehicle we're using right now for distribution for the homeless and donated it. I don't know what happened to him. Maybe his phone died. This is an extraordinary devotee. And we were saying about Gaur Sharon's class yesterday, a person can't preach effectively unless they're living what they're talking about. And he really does everything with his full heart. It's incredible, all the austerities he's performing to help to push on Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's really wonderful.
He's a pure devotee.
Hmm?
He's a pure devotee.
Yes.
We should learn from him.
He's carrying Radhanath Swami's Shakti. I mean, if you ever see them together, you won't believe it, you know. They're very, very close. And after he came back, he ran into Radhanath Swami in Boston. And he went to Mars and he said, "Am I still Bhima? Am I still Bhima?" Because he'd been away for like 20 years. And Mars grabbed him by the shirt and gave him a big hug. And then Mars just dragged him around through this program for about an hour or two, you know, to everybody that talked to, just stay right with me, you know. He just held on to him physically, held on to his clothes.
Where the heck are you? Okay.
But this point about how we're serving a person, what he's doing now, he wants to offer the project to Radhanath Swami. He's taking care of 40 guest rooms, helping with Krishna's Prasad distribution. And he's got Maharaj's book in every one of those rooms. And you'll have to talk to him a little more. But if Radhanath Swami is the person you're aspiring for initiation for, then pray to Krishna about which one of Radhanath Swami's disciples you want to serve. Somebody who's serving Maharaj, you should serve them and try to please them. How can I serve you? Not just some vague service thing. At least that's what I've heard from Srila Prabhupada. Das Nano Das, servant of the servant.
We also talked about his story online class, I think. I remember.
He does something with poetry. I don't know what that is exactly. He's very poetic. He's
Don't
got this
don't,
point. Oh,
don't speak about me behind my back, Prabhu.
well, turn around. Here, we're glorifying you. We've been glorifying you the whole time you've been away.
Oh my God, sinners, all of you sinners.
Everybody's hanging, waiting for the end of the story.
Yes, please tell us.
Maybe Krishna doesn't want me to tell this story. I'm sorry, I'm far away from the house, so the connection is bad. Can you hear me okay? Can I be heard okay?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm trying to shorten this because it is quite involved in the way that Maharaj had waited until the right moment, until it was 120 degrees, and that's not an exaggeration. And he waited until he could get me up in what we called Grandma's attic, which is, if you've ever been in an attic before, it's unbearable. And so he was there in his gamcha, and the sun was shining through the little window. And I told him, so he says, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the aforementioned exercises, and we're going to do them until someone leaves, until someone cannot do them anymore. So it was a contest of endurance and tolerance because of the heat, and endurance because of the strenuous nature of the calisthenics. So we began just with jumping jacks. Now remember, these are wide pine floors, not even floors, they're wide pine boards, untreated. So we both had bare feet, so we started doing jumping jacks. And he just kept going. And we got up to about 500. And even within that period of time, within like 15 minutes, my feet were already ripping apart. I could feel that the bottom of my feet were ripping apart, and he was just going. And I looked down and saw a little blood on the boards, and Maharaj says, "Oh, you're bleeding," and I said, "Yes, Maharaj, we need to do something else." And he goes, "Bleeding is a sign of weakness." So he got me on the heat. He said that being unable to handle the heat is a sign of weakness, and then bleeding is a sign of weakness. So he says, let's do squat thrusts. So that's something that you know what it is. It's basically a jumping jack down into a sort of a supine sit-up or kipper into a push-up. So we did those for another 10 minutes. Now, mind you, you got the heat going on. And already within a half hour into it, I was, as they say, sweating bullets. And I looked over at my wife, and he wasn't sweating at all. In fact, the only thing I could see was this sort of like halo around the top of his head, freshly shaved head. There was this halo, and it was basically the sun shining through the window, reflecting off of a fine mist, sort of a Vaishnav effulgence that he was emanating. That was his form of sweating, was to be more effulgent. Meanwhile, I was a mess. We went on to sit-ups, and doing those. Must have done at least 100 to 150 sit-ups. Then he spun around. He said, "Let's do push-ups, face-to-face push-ups." Probably did 4 sets of 50 push-ups. And I couldn't believe that he was able to do all these things. And then he said, "Are your feet healed yet?" And I go, "Maharaj, my feet are still bleeding." And he goes, "Lack of healing is a sign of weakness." And he goes, you promised to, you gave your word." So we started doing jumping jacks again. Now we were into it for about an hour and 15 minutes. And I was doing the jumping jacks with him. We're going 1, 2, 1, 2, side by side. And the brahmacharis who were stationed inside had to leave the room. They were just standing there. They had to leave the room. It was too hot, and position themselves outside the door. And so he went on, and then we did some running in places, and then back into push-ups, and then back into sit-ups, and then back into squat thrust. And we were 2 hours into it, and I was now completely sick. I've had it before, happened to me before in training, which is heat exhaustion. So I was getting nauseous, literally getting nauseous. And I told Maharaj while we were in another set of jumping jacks, Maharaj, I go, I think we should stop and get some water because I'm really, really thirsty. This is not good. I'm getting dehydrated. And Maharaj said, dehydration is a sign of weakness. So he kept going. I didn't last another 5 minutes, and I was definitely, the room was spinning by now. I was going to hurl, if you know what that word is, Gauranga Leela. I was going to throw up. I was so sick from the heat and the exhaustion. And Maharaj, of course, was just going onward, smiling, little smile on his face, little gleam in his eye, effulgence rising, no sweat. I mean, there was a little bit, a trickle of a sweat on this Damsha. Meanwhile, I was a mess. I was literally so thirsty, I was trying to drink my own sweat that was dripping down my long, luxurious curly hair. And he, so I got to the point where I was definitely gonna heave. And I said, I have to leave. This is crazy. I feel sick. And I went to the door, and Maharaj says, sickness is a sign of weakness. And if you open that door and leave, then you have lost. And you have to shave up. And I just said, I don't care, Maharaj. You're sick. This is sickness. This is unhealthy. And I opened up the door and I left. And the brahmacharis were like, whoa, we never thought it was going to be you that gave up, Bhakta Jeff. And then I went running downstairs underneath the kitchen is right underneath the attic. This is a small little bungalow. And I got my head under the faucet and I've got the water running over and I'm drinking. And meanwhile, with my head under the faucet, I go and I hear this thump, 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 thump. And up above me, while I was downstairs, I had given it up. Maharaj was still going on. I took a towel and I went into the living room and flopped down on the couch. And of course, everybody there were like looking at me and they're laughing. I was just totally humiliated. And I was on that couch for another 15 minutes, just standing there. And all I could hear was above me, thump, 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 thump. Maharaj was kept on going. And in the end, he came down and everybody was applauding. And Maharaj said, don't, he told everybody to quiet down, everybody to forget this. And so we went on with that day. It took me 2 days to recover because I literally did have heat exhaustion. And Maharaj never mentioned it again for several months, never said a word about it. So I thought I had gotten away with it. We were visiting the Boston temple some months later, and he called me up from the temple room upstairs into a room. It was like 10 o'clock at night. I was trying to finish my rounds. I was still a bhakta, and I still had my head of hair, which I was very much attached to being in college. And Maharaj called me upstairs, and there was this little room, and there were two brahmacharis on the outside on either side, like Jai and Vijay. And I was like, what's going on here? I was like, is this some form of initiation? Is like, so they opened the door and inside it was kind of dark except for a few candles burning. And inside there were all the male devotees were lined up on either side of the Boston temple, like about 4 or 5 on each side. And they were all just standing there with their arms crossed. It was sort of like a gauntlet. And I had to walk down this little, or walk past all these devotees who were just had their arms crossed and they were all silent. Maharaj was at the end and he had his arms behind him. And he said, in front of these devotees, are you a man of your word? And I said, yes, Maharaj. And he said, then kneel down. And I had totally forgotten what anything was all about. I had no idea what was going on. I thought at that time that he was honoring me. in front of the devotees. That he was going to give me some, like he was going to give me some knighthood because I had to kneel down while he was standing there. And he said, "Are you a man of your word?" And I said for a second time, "Yes, Maharaj, I am a man of my word." And all of a sudden I hear click, bzzz, and he brought his hands out from behind him and he had a hair buzzer. And he placed it on my forehead, and I go, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." He goes, many months ago, you were defeated. You gave your word that if you were defeated, you would shave your head. And he put it at my forehead, and I could feel the, and it was right at my forehead. And I was praying. I literally was praying, "Oh Lord, please no." And he said, "But we do not force anyone in Krishna consciousness. Surrender is not forced. Your giving up your hair is a sacrifice to show what you're willing, how serious you are to commit to one of the first principles of Krishna consciousness, that is that you're not your body." And he goes, "We do not force anyone, so I am going to ask you, do you want to honor the bet that we made?" And I was about to say, he's giving me a chance to back out, to maybe get some other kind of, wager, payment or something like that. And I was about to come up with a reason why he shouldn't shave my head because I was still in college. And I said, "Well, Maharaj," and he goes, right down the middle of my head, like a reverse mohawk. He just created this path with the buzzer right down the middle of my head. And I go, "Oh my God." I grabbed the top of my head. I grabbed the top of my head. I go, "Oh my God, oh my God, Maharaj. I was about to tell you I didn't want you to shave my head." And he goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Prabhu." And he reached down. This is my life. He reaches down and gathers up all the hair in his hands. And he takes it and he starts patting it on my head. He goes, "I can't get it to stick. I can't get you." He goes, "I can't get it to stick." He goes, maybe this will be a new hairstyle for you. And meanwhile, all the devotees in the room, all the Boston devotees were laughing. They were just doubled over with laughter. And so, needless to say, I had to surrender to him finishing up the job. In fact, I didn't even get a sika out of it. I got a few strands of hair because he had gone straight over my head, like making a path through the woods, right over the top of my head. And so I had this lousy little sika, and it was a lousy job done in the dark. So when I went to look in the mirror, like I had tufts of half-shaved head, I looked like a cat coming out of a dryer or something like that, like coming out of a blender. And that was how he defeated me. And I really felt in my heart that I had been fairly, fairly taught a big lesson. And of course, from that, there were many other lessons that Maharaj taught me firsthand. But that was one of the biggest. There was more to the story, of course, but that's what happened in the end. Hare Krishna.
Leela, that sounds.
That's what you call running on spiritual energy.
Jai, Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you for sharing, Bhima.
Thank you, Brajananda.
Thank you.
That's
That was
Leela asked.
that was quite the experience for you.
Well, always says, "Dad, how come all your stories are always about you getting humiliated?" Because that's what happens in Krishna consciousness. It's a series of defeat. You get ideas in your head. Life is going to be, I'm going to make life comfortable by making I'm going to secure I'm going to secure my position in this world by having a nice bank account and having a steady job. And then, of course, Krishna throws at you something where he has to defeat you. He has to make you uncomfortable to make you understand the nature of the world. that was my first test to understand the nature of pride and understand the nature of attachment to the body. So it is. Krishna consciousness is a series of defeats until the ultimate victory, of course.
Could I ask a question?
Hare Krishna.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a
Go ahead.
question?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you believe that Radhanath Swami loves you and is trying to help you?
I don't know how he would have the tolerance he had. I lived with him one-on-one for 9 months in a bungalow, and the amount, and I wasn't like a surrendered Hijai bliss boy. I wasn't belligerent, but I was, I loved my material life. I loved everything I was doing. So he showed by his long suffering with me and his willingness to do whatever it took, vis-a-vis this last pastime I just said, whatever it took to bring me to Krishna, to bring me to Krishna's feet, to help me to understand what life is all about. Yeah, I do believe, because he showed it.
When I see the two of you together, I see a tremendous bond of love. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, how wonderful is Krishna that he sends the guru. And once that surrender occurs, once we acknowledge, yeah, I'm a fool, let me just serve. So after that, it becomes very, very easy, and the ego is no longer in the way. This big ego that gets hurt every time something little and petty happens, it becomes
false ego. False ego, not ego.
False ego. Yeah. All right.
Can I say something?
Wrap it up. It's like 9:00.
Okay. So while I was listening to it, I felt like Krishna was wrestling with, was doing all this, Like Krishna was like, at that time, I guess he was watching you guys, doing the fight. I guess he was laughing at it all, I guess. I feel like that way, that Krishna, made this, kind of situation to so that both of you could have some fun together and make a strong bond together, and to make a very fun memory.
If we keep a clear enough consciousness, we will understand that Krishna is doing that in every one of our lives, every moment of the day. You just have to clear your head out and stop thinking, stop musing, stop desiring, stop wanting, and just take every moment as time spending with Krishna. That's why we chant, to remind us, so that we can hear. That chanting goes out our lips and it circles around and comes back through our ears and goes into our heart, so that we can get used to the fact that Krishna is always there with us, and Krishna is always willing to play with us or defeat us, wrestle us. Everything that happens to us, including business, when business gets reversed and all of a sudden, what do we learn from? We need to lean into our business more, or do we realize that Krishna is helping us to understand that we should never feel comfortable in this world. We should never say, I've got it together, or I can do this, I've got this. We've got to always remember that Krishna is in our heart at all times, and he's willing to engage, whether it is through the guru directly or through the Vaishnavas. Krishna is always engaging with us through the words and our relationships with the Vaishnavas. So that that type of reciprocation, where Krishna becomes immediately involved, intimately involved. Remember, we were talking about intimacy that we share. Well, every intimacy that we share on the material level is intimacy that we're missing with Krishna on the spiritual level. Every time we become intimate with the material body or somebody else's material body, no matter what the excuse is, in the mode of passion, ignorance, or goodness, that is a chance that we're missing out on becoming intimate with Krishna. Ultimately, all relationships, as you said, can I have a different rasa with Krishna? Yes, you can. It's all about your desire. And you prove your desire by your willingness to go to Krishna at all times, whether it be to go to him as a friend, go to him as an instructor, go to him as an intimate. So all those questions can be answered simply by your desire to have Krishna answer them. I'm sorry, I'm rambling on here, but I just feel it all kind of settles into place. Krishna is always willing to throw down with you. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, that whole pastime between Bhima and Raghunath Maharaj sounds like something that Krishna would do. It's always funny and it's always beneficial. Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Varanga Leela. Thank you, Brajananda, Adipusha, Prabhu, Stephanie, Sage, Sky, Bhima and his farm, Sundaranandaji. Is that your home office? Sundaranandaji, you look like...
Yep, it is. It is my home office. Yeah, that's right. That was probably one of the best afterglows I've heard. Thank you to Bhima Prabhu and Gauranga Leela for inspiring with questions. And of course, Adipurush Prabhu for his contributions.
Neha, thank you, India. Thank you, Amita Kishore, Dana, Krishna's Radharani. Thanks to everyone watching on YouTube. Hare Krishna, we appreciate your association. We treasure it. And we hope we'll see you again tomorrow. And for the rest of our time here, Amita Kishore, good to see you. Thank you for all the services you're doing.
I'm going to be drawn from Boston to New York today with about 100 pounds worth of romaine and lettuce and kale.
Good. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. We can't wait.
Wonderful salad and no.
I can't hear you.
Hey, Bhima Prabhu, you're so restless. Can you just sit in your van till in the class?
I am dry. Can you hear me now? Am I okay?
Yeah. You're climbing a tree or something?
I'm driving. Yes. The cats climb up this tree. I usually have to climb up after them. They don't know how to get down. Here they are now. I'm saying I'm driving down to New York with 120 pounds worth of produce for everybody. I'm going to bring it to the Brooklyn Temple and to the Bhakti Center and to Adi's program. So be sure to visit the temple so you can have some of the nice kale and the nice lettuce and romaine, spinach that come from the farm here.
Cool. Thank you, Bhima Prabhu. I'll give it to my friend who has tattoos and beard. I'll tell him. Okay. Hare Krishna. Take care, everybody. Hare